Here is something genuinely strange about how people plan for retirement. They will calculate their nest egg down to the very last dollar obsessively. They tweak their savings, their returns, their retirement date again and again. And then they leave one enormous line item completely blank on the entire plan. That single blank line quietly costs the average person around $300,000. It is the one number people obsess least about, yet it wrecks the most retirements. And the reason is almost never money. It is a simple, comforting misunderstanding. $300,000 missing from a plan they thought was airtight. The line item is retirement health care, and roughly 90% of people get it wrong. Meet Daniela. She built a careful, detailed retirement plan she was proud of. Every category was there. Housing, food, travel, a little fun money each month. But for healthcare, she wrote a single, confident, and completely wrong word: Medicare. She assumed, like most people do, that Medicare would simply cover everything for free. That one assumption was about to blow a $300,000 hole in her retirement. We will show you the real number, why it hides, and exactly how to fund it. And by the end, that blank line on your plan will finally have an honest figure in it. So today, we fix the retirement number that almost everyone gets catastrophically wrong. And the best part is that this number is entirely fixable at almost any age. You do not need more income or a lucky break. You only need to stop ignoring it. This one line is the difference between a comfortable retirement and a frightening one. Because a surprise you plan for is a budget. A surprise you ignore is a disaster. Picture Daniela on the day she retired, feeling completely, wonderfully prepared. Her budget was balanced, her savings were solid, and every line seemed covered. She had no idea a single blank line was quietly waiting to undo all of it. That is the danger of this number. It stays invisible right up until it arrives. First, let us look at the actual number, because it is far bigger than people expect. A single 65-year-old retiring today will spend around $172,000. $172,000 just on healthcare across their retirement. For a couple, that number roughly doubles to around $345,000. And this figure is calculated after tax, so it is real spendable money you must have. You would need an even larger pre-tax balance to actually cover it from savings. $345,000 on top of everything else they planned for. And here is the part that stuns people. That figure does not even include long-term care. A nursing home or in-home care can add hundreds of thousands more on top of that. So the real, complete number can be even larger than the headline suggests. So the true healthcare number is enormous, and almost nobody writes it into their plan. Why do 90% of people get this so badly wrong? One simple, costly belief. They believe Medicare is free, and that it quietly covers everything once you turn 65. Both halves of that belief are wrong, and each half is expensive on its own. Medicare is not free. It has premiums, deductibles, and costs that never truly stop. And Medicare does not cover everything. It leaves gaping holes you must fill yourself. Let us be precise about that word, free, because it does so much damage. You paid into Medicare through payroll taxes your entire working life, so Part A feels earned. But that only covers part of the system, and the rest carries real ongoing costs. So the word free quietly hides a stack of premiums, deductibles, and gaps behind it. Ignore those two truths, and a $300,000 bill ambushes you later. No shame for anyone caught by this. The myth of free Medicare is everywhere. We grow up hearing that once you hit 65, healthcare is finally handled. So people file it away as solved and never revisit it until the day it is not. This is not a lecture. It is the correction almost nobody ever received. So let us keep it fair and specific. Here is exactly what the data shows. Think of your retirement plan like a boat you have carefully checked for leaks. You sealed every visible crack, so you feel confident sailing into the horizon. But one hole below the waterline was never checked, because you never knew it existed. That hidden hole is the healthcare number, and it sinks more retirements than any storm. The good news is that a hole you can see is a hole you can patch in advance. To see this clearly, let us follow Daniela against a coworker. Meet Megan. Daniela and Megan are the same age, same job, same comfortable retirement savings. Both plan to retire at 65, with roughly the same nest egg saved. But Daniela left the healthcare line blank, trusting Medicare to handle it all. Megan did something Daniela did not. She actually looked up the real number. Megan wrote $345,000 directly into her retirement budget. It looked scary on paper, but a scary number on paper is far safer than a hidden one. Because Megan saw the number early, she had decades to quietly prepare for it. Daniela saw the number for the first time in her 60s, when it was almost too late. Same savings, same age, same plan. One prepared for the number, one got ambushed by it. Meet their younger coworker, Travis, who is certain none of this applies to him yet. Travis assumes healthcare is an old person problem he can safely ignore for now. But Travis has the one thing that makes this number easy: decades of time to prepare. A young person who funds this now will barely feel the cost of a huge future bill. An older person who ignores it will feel the entire weight of it all at once. So the earlier you learn this number, the smaller and gentler it becomes. Let us open Daniela's plan and find the $300,000 she missed. Notice that Megan was not smarter or richer than Daniela. She was just informed. She read one report, faced one uncomfortable number, and adjusted one line in her plan. That tiny, unglamorous act of preparation quietly protected her entire retirement. The gap between the two women was never money. It was a single piece of information. Because this number is not a reason to panic. It is a reason to plan, starting now. Before we start, Daniela did the one thing that finally opened her eyes. She sat down with a financial advisor and asked him to review her plan honestly. He got to the healthcare line, paused, and asked why it was completely blank. Daniela said what almost everyone says. She thought Medicare would just handle it. The advisor gently showed her the real number, and her confidence quietly cracked. Truth won, and the first crack in the myth. Medicare is not actually free. Most people picture turning 65 and paying nothing for healthcare ever again. But Medicare has monthly premiums that come straight out of your Social Security check. The standard Part B premium alone is around $185 a month. That is over $2,000 a year per person just to stay enrolled. Then come the deductibles you must pay before Medicare pays a single dollar. And here is the part that shocks people most. Original Medicare has no spending cap. You typically owe about 20% of many costs with no ceiling on the total. 20% sounds small until the total behind it is genuinely enormous. 20% of a $200,000 hospital stay is $40,000. And with no cap, a truly severe year could cost far more than that. That uncapped exposure is the single scariest feature of Original Medicare alone. So a single serious illness can leave you owing 20% of an enormous bill. Medicare is real, valuable coverage, but free is a myth that quietly bankrupts people. And those premiums are not fixed forever. They tend to climb year after year. Higher earners pay even more, through surcharges tied to their retirement income. And prescription drug coverage is yet another premium, on top of all the rest. So the free retirement healthcare people imagine simply does not exist anywhere. The premiums alone, over a long retirement, add up to a small fortune. Truth 2, the second crack. Medicare leaves enormous gaps you must cover yourself. It generally does not cover routine dental care, and mouths get expensive with age. It generally does not cover vision, so glasses and eye care come out of your pocket. It generally does not cover hearing aids, which can cost thousands of dollars a pair. Dental, vision, and hearing are exactly the things that fail as we grow older. So the coverage gaps line up almost perfectly with the needs of an aging body. But the biggest gap of all is the one that terrifies planners: long-term care. Medicare does not cover extended nursing home stays or ongoing daily in-home help. And long-term care is staggeringly expensive, often exceeding $100,000 a year. This is the number that quietly frightens even wealthy, well-prepared retirees. It is the one expense large enough to threaten almost any nest egg on its own, which is exactly why it deserves a deliberate decision, not a hopeful shrug. A few years of it can erase an entire lifetime of careful saving in one blow. Consider what these everyday gaps actually cost a real retiree each year. A couple of dental crowns alone can run into several $1,000s. A single pair of quality hearing aids can cost as much as a used car. None of it is optional. These are the things that keep you living a full life. So the gaps are not luxuries you can skip. They are core needs Medicare ignores. These gaps are not small print. They are the difference between comfort and ruin. Truth 3. When you add the premiums and the gaps, you get the real number. For one person, that lifetime healthcare number lands near $172,000. For a couple, it climbs to roughly $345,000. Now compare that to what most people actually budget for healthcare: almost nothing. That gap between the real number and the imagined one is the $300,000. Some people do budget something, but they guess a tiny fraction of the true cost. They might set aside $20,000, imagining that will comfortably cover it all. But $20,000 against a $300,000 cost is barely a rounding error. So even the people who try still miss the mark by a devastating margin. This is why 90% get it wrong. They compare a real cost to an imaginary zero. It is not that people are careless. Nobody ever handed them the real figure. The number is real, well-documented, and updated every single year by researchers. But it rarely makes it into a personal plan because it is uncomfortable to face. And a number you refuse to face does not disappear. It just waits and it grows. Think about how strange this blind spot really is compared to every other cost. Nobody plans a house purchase and simply leaves the price tag blank and hopes. Yet with a $300,000 healthcare cost, that is exactly what people do. The size of the number is precisely why people flinch and look away from it. But the bigger a number is, the more it deserves to be planned, not avoided. Simply writing the real number into your plan is most of the battle already won. So, how do you actually fund a $300,000 number? Start with the best tool. The Health Savings Account, or HSA, was practically built for this exact problem. It carries a rare triple tax advantage that no other account can match. Money goes in tax-free, grows tax-free, and comes out tax-free for medical costs. It is the only account that shields your money from taxes at all 3 stages. If you qualify, you can contribute every year and invest the balance for decades. A dollar Travis puts in his HSA at 30 can grow enormously by 65. Then, in retirement, he can withdraw it tax-free to pay those healthcare bills. Think about how perfectly matched the HSA is to this specific problem. It is money set aside for medical costs, growing tax-free for medical costs. The purpose of the account and the purpose of the number are exactly the same. Using it is like buying the exact right tool for the exact right job. It is the cleanest, most powerful way to pre-fund a cost you already know is coming. There is even a catch-up rule that lets older savers add extra dollars each year. So even a saver starting in their 50s still has a real meaningful tool. Most people leave this account completely empty, ignoring a gift built exactly for them. Here is a quiet trick the well-prepared use with their HSA accounts. Pay small medical bills out of pocket now and let the account grow untouched. Save your receipts, and decades later, you can reimburse yourself completely tax-free. That turns a humble health account into a powerful, dedicated retirement fund. Travis, still young, can ride that growth for 35 uninterrupted years. Megan maxed hers for years. Daniela never funded a single dollar into one. Next, the coverage choices that decide how big those gaps actually are. Original Medicare alone leaves you exposed, with no cap on what you might owe. So most people add a second layer to plug the holes and cap their exposure. One option is a supplement, often called Medigap, that pays many of your leftover costs. Another is a Medicare Advantage plan, which bundles coverage with its own trade-offs. There is no single right answer, but there is a wrong one. Choosing blindly. Each option changes your monthly premium and your worst-case exposure differently. The choice you make at 65 can quietly lock in your costs for decades. And switching later can be limited, so the first decision truly matters. This is not a place to skim the fine print and pick whatever seems easiest. An hour of careful comparison here can be worth tens of thousands over a retirement. The point is to choose deliberately, not to stumble into the default and hope. And then there is the long-term care wildcard, which needs its own separate thought. Some buy insurance for it, some earmark savings, some plan to rely on family. The odds here are sobering. Most people will need some long-term care eventually. It is not a rare tragedy that happens only to other people. It is common. Yet almost nobody plans for it because it is uncomfortable to even imagine. The discomfort is exactly why it stays unplanned, and unplanned is exactly why it ruins people. Facing it early, even briefly, is what turns a catastrophe into a manageable plan. Any deliberate plan beats the most common one, which is to simply hope it never happens. Finally, the move that ties it all together. Build the number into your plan on purpose. A hidden cost is a landmine. A written down cost is just another line in the budget. So add a healthcare line to your retirement number, sized to the real figure. Then fund it steadily, ideally through that tax-free HSA over the years you have left. Think of it like filling a bucket before a long drought you know is coming. Fill it slowly over many years, and you barely notice the water going in. Wait until the drought arrives and you are frantically hauling water by the bucket. Same bucket, same water. Only the calm of starting early is different. The earlier you start, the smaller each monthly contribution needs to be. A young saver can fund the entire number with almost pocket change each month. Let us make that early start advantage concrete, because it is enormous. Start at 30, and funding the whole number might cost a few hundred a month. Wait until 60, and the same target demands a frantic, painful monthly amount. Time does the heavy lifting when you start early, so your wallet barely notices. That is why this video matters just as much for a 30-year-old as a 60-year-old. A late starter has to scramble, but even a late plan beats no plan at all. Megan even opened a separate account just to hold her growing healthcare fund. Keeping it separate meant she was never tempted to spend it on something else. Every month, a small automatic transfer fed it without her lifting a finger. By the time the bills arrived, the money was already sitting there, waiting. There is a certain relief in turning a vague dread into a concrete, boring line item. Boring in retirement planning is very often exactly what you want. An exciting retirement surprise is almost always an expensive, unwelcome one. So aim for the calm, boring certainty of a number you have already handled. Once the number is written down and funded, it stops being a terror and becomes a task. Now here is the twist that reframes this entire $300,000 number. The number itself was never really the problem. The surprise was the problem. A known $300,000 cost is simply a large, manageable budget item. An unknown $300,000 cost is a catastrophe that arrives without warning. Same number, same dollars. The only difference is whether you saw it coming. Here is what actually happens to people who never write this number down. They feel financially secure right up until a single diagnosis changes everything. Then the bills arrive, the plan collapses, and the comfortable retirement is gone. Meanwhile, the person who faced the scary number early barely feels it at all. Megan wrote down the terrifying number, and that act alone quietly diffused it. The most dangerous costs in retirement are never the big ones you planned for. Every retirement horror story you have ever heard hides one of these blank lines. It is almost never reckless spending. It is a knowable cost nobody wrote down, which is strangely hopeful because a knowable cost is a completely preventable disaster. They are the ones you left blank, assuming someone else would quietly handle them. Facing a hard number is not pessimism. It is the highest form of financial optimism. An invisible enemy cannot be fought. A visible one can be planned around and defeated. So the entire trick is dragging this number out of the shadows and onto the page. Because only a number you can see is a number you can actually beat. The wealthy do not have some secret escape from these healthcare costs. They simply treat the number as a known, planned line, the way they treat every expense. That habit, planning for the knowable, is available to absolutely everyone. You do not need their money. You only need to borrow their calm, deliberate habit. Here is the line worth remembering. A cost you plan for can never ambush you. There is a strange comfort that comes from finally naming a fear out loud. A vague fear of medical bills can grow endlessly, feeding on the unknown. But a specific number has edges. It can be measured, funded, and finally checked off. So the goal was never to make the number small. It was to make it visible. So do not fear the 300,000. Fear leaving the line blank. Think about how differently the two women experienced the exact same expense. For Megan, a big medical bill was a Tuesday. She paid it from a fund and moved on. For Daniela, the same bill was a crisis that reshaped her entire retirement. The dollars on the bill were completely identical. Only the preparation was different. Preparation did not make the bill smaller. It made the bill survivable. Write the number down, and the scariest cost in retirement quietly loses its power. So let us turn all of this into a simple checklist you can start this very week. First, accept that Medicare is valuable, but it is neither free nor complete. Second, write a real healthcare number into your retirement plan, not a blank or a zero. Use roughly $172,000 per person as a starting estimate. Adjust it up if your health history or family longevity suggests you will need more. Third, if you qualify, open and fund a health savings account as early as you can. Fourth, choose your coverage deliberately, weighing premiums against worst-case exposure. Fifth, make a real deliberate decision about long-term care, whatever that decision is. You do not have to solve all 5 perfectly today, or even in one sitting. Even just writing the real number down this week changes everything that follows. None of these steps require you to be wealthy, only to stop leaving the line blank. Notice that the steps cost her almost nothing but a single honest afternoon. There was no fee, no complex product, and no gatekeeper standing between her and safety. She simply refused to keep leaving the most important line completely blank. Daniela eventually did all 5, late but not too late, and steadied her whole retirement. And Travis, the youngest of the 3, has it easiest of all. A tiny automatic contribution now, and his future healthcare is quietly handled. He will reach 65 with the scariest number already paid for in advance. That is the reward for facing an uncomfortable truth while you still have time. Megan did them early and barely thought about healthcare costs ever again. Picture the two of them years into retirement on the very same difficult day. Megan hears a scary diagnosis and worries only about her health, not her money. Daniela hears the same words and is crushed by fear for her health and her savings at once. That is the real gift of planning. It lets you spend your worry where it belongs. The $300,000 did not shrink for either of them. Their fear of it did. Make the decision that matches your reality, not someone else's sales pitch. If this helped you spot the number you were about to get wrong, subscribe to Robert Money Logic. Hit the notification bell so the next breakdown reaches you at exactly the right moment. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every single day. You cannot control whether you get sick. You can control whether it bankrupts you. Your future self will either thank you for facing this or wish that you had. And the entire difference between those two futures fits on one written line. The most expensive number in retirement is the one you never bothered to write down. Share this with someone whose retirement plan still has that line sitting blank. A single conversation could save them from the most preventable disaster in retirement. Because the healthcare number is only terrifying while it is still a secret. The blank line is the only truly dangerous part, and it takes seconds to fill in. So find your healthcare number, write it down, and never let it ambush you.